This is Scott Stewart. Welcome to LonghausTV. With me today is ADRIAN LUCA, CTO of Hitachi Data Systems. ADRIAN, Hitachi recently released a report called the Information GLUT. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Scott, this is our second year that we're actually commissioned a report to really understand the impact that this gluttony of information that we're collecting is actually having on organisations. So the key driver of this report is really to understand underneath what impact that this deluge of information is having on society, is actually having on productivity and competitiveness. And what we certainly found both in 2009 and when we repeated the survey in 2011 is that many of the problems were actually getting worse. What we found back in 2009 is 34% of organisations found that they were mismanaging information. And it wasn't because they purposely were looking to do that. It was because they just didn't know how. And unfortunately, in 2011, the problem became worse, now approaching 40%. Something that's fairly near and dear to many IT administrators, storage administrators, is recovering files from backups. And again, back in 2009, we had 36% of organisations that were actually unable to recover a file when they needed it. And once again, the problem was worse in 2011. Probably one of the biggest statistics that we were quite surprised with was the fact that of just how many organisations leave emails in the hands of their employees, despite the fact that it's actually a record and classified as a record by things like National Archives. So, and unfortunately that was 82% of organisations that said that in 2009, and only slightly better at 71% in 2011. But all of these things, what we really wanted to understand is what impact that was having on productivity and competitiveness. So we actually worked with Deloitte, who really conservatively looked at what impact that was having on productivity, and what they found that it was actually adding as much as a $3 billion drag on productivity in Australia, and over in New Zealand it was $400 million. So these were real problems that we are obviously tackling with today, but is successively getting worse year on year. So we've been talking about an information intervention. And what we're here to do is really help organisations in three key ways, which is really help them understand and assess the impact that they're actually experiencing in their organisation. And obviously the report helps them do that. We also understand how people and process can actually help through education and utilising technology. And then obviously there are the modern technologies and the tools and the infrastructure to help with that. So certainly some interesting findings there for the Australians and New Zealanders.
Absolutely. So I mean, there's always been a lot of noise, or most recently a lot of noise about big data, and everyone's talking about how to manage it and the technology. But I'm not sure anyone's tackled it that I'm aware of around the productivity angle. So is it just about managing the flow through of data, or is it the storage? Is it the retrieval? What are the key issues with this sort of information glut?
Yeah, I mean, and this is giving rise to this concept of big data, and I think we're still learning, or organisations are learning, what big data is about. But I think one of the key misconceptions about big data is just the size of it. That's only one element. Certainly we are seeing applications growing 50, 70, in some cases multiple 100 times per year, which is leading to some of those statistics that we found. But what's really the underlying problem is this interconnectedness between all of the information. What we really want to do is try and find real profitable information out of all these silos that we're actually connecting or collecting over the years. And some of that is going to come from applications that we have within our data centres. Some of that is also going to be application repositories that exist in the internet or potentially from other service providers. So being able to take all of these different information silos that, again, are growing, but more so trying to find patterns and analytics behind those that help create or help really bring through some of those, I guess, competitive opportunities to bring innovation is what organisations are looking for.
Have you done any work on what the actual business value is of those silos? In other words, we all keep our emails for 3-4 years or more, but what's the real value of data that's 3 or 4 year old? Now I know there's regulatory where you have to keep data, but do you do much work around the actual business value of just storing so much data?
Well, we've had data warehouses for a long time now, and certainly retailers, for example, have been very successful at trying to mine information based on, obviously historical information, and trying to use that as inputs into their forward strategies. We're really seeing that everybody needs some element of analytics. We see things like click-throughs on websites, for example. Google are doing some really interesting things there in terms of understanding, where do users spend more time on pages these days. But I think it's spreading right through into government. We're certainly speaking with a number of government agencies, including police agencies, about how they can use historical information to help them understand some of those key trends to focus resources. It really comes down to, Scott, is we are resource poor. So if we can use these information silos, and in particular our historical information, to create greater intelligence of where to put those resources in, then we're increasing our productivity, and certainly in a commercial environment we're increasing our competitiveness.
Okay. Hitachi recently announced unified storage. Okay, what is unified storage? What's it mean to the CIO? Maybe take us through right from the beginning. What actually is it?
Yeah, a great point. I mean, unified storage isn't necessarily something new. It's something that's been out there for the past 18 months, almost 2 years. I think unified storage, and the reason why it's given rise to unified, is the fact that over the years, as our application deployments have grown, and because of the project-based procurement of those applications, we typically have acquired infrastructure for each of those separate types of applications. So, when we're deploying databases, we buy infrastructure and typically what we call structured-based storage for that application. When we've deployed email or SharePoint or some of these larger video and audio content repositories, we buy separate storage for that. When you look at it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. We create more silos in the data centres, more points of management, and ultimately more cost. So what organisations are really asking for is, well, isn't storage really just storage? And I want to be able to provide the same levels of management, performance, and in many cases regulatory compliance and data protection across all of these different assets. So that has given rise to unified storage, where you have a common pool of storage, which obviously delivers multiple types of media and different tiers, and then deliver that in different ways, whether it be block, file, or certainly what's been emerging is object, which is really archive-based storage. So we absolutely believe in the need for unified storage, particularly here in the Australian market and the New Zealand market, as it starts to introduce some of the capabilities that the big boys have had for many years, and starts to make that more accessible and affordable to some of the smaller organisations that are also growing. I guess our take is that we don't necessarily agree with the way the rest of the industry has been building it. If there's a term I could probably coin, is that many of the solutions on the market today are really a jack of all trades but a master of none. They've taken existing products and adapted either or gone from file to object, or file to structured, or structured to file. And that has obviously meant that you have to compromise when you want to tune to one type of application or another.
So what does that mean for the CIO who's perhaps heavily invested in storage area network, perhaps looking at a refresh, data center, maybe the disaster recovery needs attention? What does this mean? Does this mean that is it a rip and replace? Is it, how do they deal with, well, here's another sort of accessible technology, and we're talking about replacing SANs here?
Gone are the days where you can rip and replace existing assets. I think all vendors have had to not just figure out ways in which they can work with the existing infrastructure, but add value to that existing infrastructure. Certainly our approach to the market has been since 2004, since introducing our virtualization capabilities, is how do we make what's already there better? And some of that may be adding additional capability or functionality. Some of that may be repurposing it. But the idea is, how do we extend the life of those existing assets? So whether that be existing storage assets or existing networking assets, is really how do we start to bring about some of those increases in utilisation, stretching out TCOs or return on investment so that we can actually utilise that over a longer period of time.
So if I'm looking at a situation where I've got a SAN or two, and perhaps they're getting a bit long in the tooth, are you saying that you can implement this unified storage in perhaps in a piecemeal way, like in a way, a modular way, where you can just sit that on top of that?
That's exactly what we're saying. It's fair to say that our approach to the marketplace as Hitachi Data Systems is to bring not appliance technology, but platform technology. The benefit of that for many CIOs is that they don't need to buy all of these capabilities up front and only not to use them for 2 or 3 years. So the way we're delivering our unified platform is there's a block option which you can use for your structured data assets, and add file as an additional option on top of that block when you're wanting to deploy it for your unstructured information. So obviously that modular approach has been very attractive to many CIOs because it reduces that upfront capital investment. It means that they can continue to use that and leverage that as they continue to grow.
And this is not an appliance approach, so this is a software.
Well, what it is basically capabilities that we continue to build on some very firm foundations. Again, a lot of our competitors have done, I think, a good job at being able to say, well, we can do all of this functionality in the one box. That's a benefit in itself, in the sense that organisations feel that they can implement those capabilities as and when they need it by consolidation, but we don't believe that you should have to pay for it up front. So our approach has been start to build these capabilities from the ground up and continue to leverage those as part of a wider storage strategy.
And would this help CIOs who are implementing perhaps a cloud strategy where they have a lot of on-premise and they want to start moving some workloads into different clouds? Will this help, basically unify all that together?
Yeah, I think that certainly Hitachi Data Systems' mantra has been, how do we make our customers cloud ready? And certainly if you look at many of the offerings on the market today, they do give you that unification benefit and single management, but they don't necessarily give you some of the capabilities that cloud needs, things like multi-tenancy, security silos. So what the Hitachi Data Systems unified storage platform delivers is security silos, logical partitioning capabilities, so that whether you're using it for public clouds or private clouds, or even this concept of community clouds, it's a set of capabilities that you can adopt day one and transition through if you're moving towards some of those leveraged models.
Now, when you ask people who are Hitachi, what do they do? Most people go, they're in storage, aren't they? But you're much more than that.
Yeah, I think we're well known for making everything from rice cookers to nuclear power plants. Certainly Hitachi's philosophy has been that we prefer to reinvest a lot of our profits back into R&D. Last year we spent $4.3 billion just in R&D alone. So being an innovator and a pioneer in terms of transforming the marketplace with new capabilities or different capabilities from the norm, you probably don't see us on billboards and in airports. So certainly our strategy has been, how do we continue to innovate, bring holistic solutions that scale very large, which has been our pedigree into the large government spaces, the large commercial spaces, but now bring a lot of that core IP that we've been delivering to the market for the past 25 years down into some of the mid-market spaces. That's where we're really excited about in terms of the unified storage platform, as we now start to bring some of the capability that the big boys have had down into that mid-market space.
Last thing, we talked about information glut, so finish with some advice for the CIO in the context of how they deal with this information glut.
Well, certainly, it's the information intervention that we've been talking about for the last 3 years. Certainly, you can't manage what you can't measure. So understanding and doing an assessment of what impact the information glut is having on your organisation is really important. So Hitachi Data Systems has a number of methodologies, including our storage economics assessment, that helps us come in, understand very quickly what impact that's actually having on your costs, your productivity, your competitiveness, and then from there we can start to look at people and process in terms of what sort of education, what skills enablement needs to be done. It's not until you understand those first two things that you can really understand what underlying technology and infrastructure capabilities are going to be needed to support that. So we're far more than just an infrastructure and technology innovator. We really have the process and the tools around helping organisations understand that.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you.